Thank you all for joining us for today's AppFabric webcast, Building Composite Application Services, presented by Rick Garibay. My name is Meredith Mead, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Neudesic and the moderator for today's webcast. This webcast is presented by Rick Garibay, Neudesic's General Manager of the Connected Systems Practice. If you are logged on, you should be able to see the title slide that states Neudesic. There was a brief intro earlier regarding features within Live Meeting. To briefly recap, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session by typing them in. To ask a question, click on the Q&A verbiage located in the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. Please note all questions will be held until the end. We will also be using the seating chart feature within Live Meeting. Changing your feedback color within this tool provides feedback to the presenter. To provide feedback, click on the Feedback menu found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Select your feedback color. Your seat in the conference center will display your selected color. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded. We will be sending out a link to review this recording once it becomes available. If everyone is ready, please make sure your seat color is green. And at this time, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Rick.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, evening, from wherever you may be joining us. Thank you very much, Meredith, for the introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop here, and we'll just ask for a quick verification to make sure that you're able to see my desktop here. So at this point, everybody should see the first title slide of today's session, Building Composite Enterprise Services with AppFabric. Meredith, if you'll just confirm that you can see that, we'll go ahead and get started.
I can. Looks good. Okay,
great. Well, a little bit about me. As Meredith mentioned, I am the General Manager for the Connected Systems Practice at Neudesic. I own the technology strategy for Connected Systems for the company. I'm also a Connected Systems MVP, I think 4 years running, and work with Microsoft to directly impact and provide feedback from customers in the field around connected technologies as a Microsoft Connected Technology Advisor. I also run the Phoenix Connected Systems User Group with a good friend of mine and BizTalk VTS named Todd Sussman. So if you're ever in Phoenix on the first Wednesday of every month, we meet at 5:30, have pizza and 90 minutes of great content around connected systems technologies. You can always keep up with me on my blog, which is provided here, as well as on Twitter, Rick G. Garibay, to continue the conversation or just reach out and say hi. So this is actually the fourth and final webcast as part of this AppFabric webcast series. And if you've been keeping up with the series, then you'll know that we started off with WCF4 and Workflow 4 workflow services, which really kind of form the core technologies or pillars of AppFabric. And the last webcast that we did was focused on Service Bus, and these pillars or these core technologies, if you will, all kind of roll up into this last webcast where I'm going to show you how you put all these different technologies together to build composite enterprise services with AppFabric. And so we define AppFabric as a comprehensive middleware platform for developing, deploying, and managing enterprise applications, both on-premise and in the cloud. And so we'll jump into a lot more detail around that as we proceed. So the goal today is to take a look at the trends in application design and infrastructure. We'll kind of take a quick retrospective look to kind of put into context where we are today and where the both challenges and opportunities are for building enterprise software. We'll look at kind of the pillars of enterprise software and kind of the pivot points that introduce complexity, specifically around performance and scale, hosting, composition or composing services, and then transcending trust boundaries, so starting to take advantage of both private and commercial clouds such as Microsoft Azure. And then we'll wrap up, time permitting, with a little bit of a roadmap discussion in terms of having understood where we are today, where we're heading. Everything that I'll be demoing and talking about today is available as generally available bits, which will be a combination of framework and Azure SDKs, AppFabric SDKs, etc. So everything that we'll talk about are things that you should be able to get your hands on and start getting your hands dirty with if you haven't already. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So when we think about kind of where we are, it's always interesting to take a look back at where we've been. From an application infrastructure perspective, we've kind of continued chipping away at kind of two main themes, and one is how do we provide increasing levels of indirection such that we can build enterprise software that yields loose coupling and highly cohesive iterative reuse, and at the same time, how can we ensure that the core capabilities or quality attributes as far as performance, availability, scalability, etc., remain high. And so I think if you look at the evolution of application infrastructure over the last several decades, you'll kind of see that trend as we evolved from mainframe into client server, and then really the evolution that was born through web and the internet into SOA and cloud. And I think that where we find ourselves today from an enterprise application integration strategy is in a place where there's really never been a better platform discussion around all the capabilities and tooling that's available for actually enabling high caliber enterprise solutions that transcend traditional data center boundaries. So both delivering capabilities on-prem, and we'll talk about the key technologies that are prevalent today, as well as determining what are the right workloads or scenarios to start to look at the cloud to, and how do we make sure that we bridge those together such that we're delivering kind of a hybrid composite solution. When we talk about enterprise applications, composability is really a key part of the discussion, because in building enterprise caliber solutions, we tend to think about the problem both from a functional and a non-functional perspective, and having understood some of those business processes or business scenarios, start to factor the solution to that problem into reusable units of deployment, if you will. And those units of deployment, are really focused to yield high reuse, such that we can reuse these bits and pieces, provide enterprise capabilities like interoperability, scalability, reliability, the ability to span multiple units of reuse in terms of kind of the definition of a logical transaction. So that composition is very much a part of how we break down a big problem into bite-sized chunks, but it also introduces with as many benefits equal, if not more challenges in terms of how we think about not only building and designing these solutions, but deploying and managing and monitoring. And so, to take kind of a representative example or a motivating example for the purposes of this webcast, we'll focus a little bit on maybe hospitality theme here, such that maybe we're working within an organization that provides travel and hospitality solutions to end customers. And so one of the business processes that might be made available and decomposed into the right number of pieces is the ability to accept and confirm reservation, perhaps for a restaurant that's part of an alliance, if you will, of participating restaurants. And that might compose one or more different services, either existing or representing the exposure of traditional applications that are exposed using adapter frameworks and whatnot. And then in addition to that, we want to be able to process the reservation, which may include kind of a human step in the workflow, if you will, and such that we review kind of the requests and accommodations that have been made, and if we're able to actually approve that, then there's a kind of a long running processing step there that takes place that requires human intervention, and then that might result in the composition of a task or business process that reserves the actual table at a restaurant, on property or out in the field somewhere. So we'll kind of stick with the travel and hospitality theme for the purposes of kind of bringing all of these ideas and concepts together. But that's really kind of the idea of composite applications. So each of these dots or circles, if you will, represent applications or services, both primitive and contemporary, that allow for this orchestration, if you will, across to yield that business value that's realized not in the delivery of services, but in the composition of those services that delivers business processes in an automated manner. So when we think about the strategy for doing that, the Middleout approach is one in which Neudesic has really focused on for the last several years, and that is one in which we, having understood what that driver is, what those scenarios are that are kind of driving this composition, looking across a variety of different applications and services, and exposing those applications and services so that they can be composed by kind of a higher order or a higher level business requirement or vision. And so those assets might be brand new assets in which we're building those services, those applications with contemporary service orientation in mind, such that they can natively interact via SOAP or REST or OData, or maybe they're line of business applications that were created long before this idea of being able to orchestrate that application as part of a business process. Might be direct data integration, integration with ERP systems, other trading partners, etc. But the idea is that once we figure out the best, most cost-effective way of exposing these assets, we then compose those assets into those process reservation and reserve table type of business processes, which is really then driving that agility and efficiency within the organization, such that a lot of these systems that might otherwise exist as silos or islands into themselves can actually be consolidated into a modernized enterprise. And the key really is that once we do the work that is involved in exposing and then composing those assets into those business processes, we can then expose those such that they're consumed in a consistent interoperable manner, which means that they're being consumed through intranet commercial applications on the web, on the desktop, packaged line of business applications, and certainly I'm sure I don't have to tell anybody that's made this session that there's a huge focus on mobility and really empowering the mobile workforce such that they can take advantage, just as we've traditionally looked to take advantage of these enterprise capabilities really from anywhere in the world on a device that fits within the palm of your hand. So I want to shift focus now, kind of putting the composability that's kind of key or core to enterprise application into a frame that discusses both the aspects of enterprise applications that are highly desirable, but at the same time, truly do introduce some challenges, and we'll talk about how current investments, both within BizTalk Server and AppFabric, really aim to help with these key challenges. So the first is really around performance and scale. Both of these are highly sought after capabilities that we think about when we're designing enterprise caliber applications and services, and so that applies both to web applications as well as services. Hosting, how do we host these services and think about things such as making the deployment process as straightforward as possible and trying to bridge this divide that exists between the the architect, developer, and the IT pro. How do we manage configuration once the services have been deployed, monitoring, troubleshooting in a proactive manner? And then certainly the composition aspects, which include applications that are long running. And when I use the term applications, I'm kind of overloading it with services. But application services that are long running in nature, that have the ability to do some work, maybe persist or become idle, and then actually continue work after some stimulus is received. The ability to do asynchronous processing, so maybe parallelizing certain tasks such that they take place in tandem to increase that performance and maximize the computing resources available. And then certainly as you think about a business process that obviously we've graduated from the mainframe, so the solution isn't to have everything running on a single machine, and we've evolved beyond client server and pure web into kind of this logically centralized but physically distributed model for delivering on these enterprise solutions. Basically meaning that there's a number of different services that are being composed into these business processes. So how do you connect the dots and kind of figure out what's actually going on in the context of the business process, and then working your way down into the actual services that participate to yield that business value. And then in today's day and age, with the proliferation of cloud computing, we really need to revisit how we think about enterprise software and enterprise solutions, such that we really look to transcend the traditional data center, such that we're taking advantage of the right pieces in the cloud, perhaps moving certain workloads into the cloud, and then figuring out a strategy for how to make that completely seamless to the business processes that really become location aware, which truly is I think the true goal of enterprise solutions, in terms of that loose coupling and location transparency that really then truly introduces that flexibility. But we do have to contend with things like firewalls and identity and access control, and those are things that become even more important as we start to compose these services across traditional trust boundaries. So when we think about the enterprise platform from a Microsoft perspective, never before have there been a richer tool set available to us to actually deliver on these scenarios. So when thinking about on-premise, the combination of Windows Server, AppFabric, and BizTalk Server really are going to provide the first-class hosting ability to provide a infrastructure for simplifying the management experience for working with composite applications, and really delivering on that enterprise scale performance and availability from a server AppFabric standpoint. And BizTalk Server continues to be the tool of choice for easily connecting .NET applications to line of business systems across both platform and vendor boundaries and trading partner management. The productivity enhancements that are born of mapping, the adapter framework, including the WCF line of business adapters, and continuous investments in updated platform support really make BizTalk Server a great complement to Windows Server AppFabric and vice versa, for really kind of delivering on these composite scenarios, both from a traditional service-oriented perspective, as well as enterprise application integration, and really providing that first-class integration tool set for these line of business applications. And then certainly Windows Azure AppFabric today provides the ability to continue to leverage the tools and the framework around WCF and workflow services, et cetera, BizTalk orchestrations to look at opportunities for shifting some of those workloads into the cloud, and getting some of these benefits, such as elastic scale, and allowing the hybrid composition of some of these applications and services that exist on-prem, and bridging that divide to the cloud, and really round tripping, I think, is kind of that next evolution, such that we can not only consume applications and services that may reside in a different cloud, private or commercial, but that these applications and services can seamlessly consume our assets and resources that are living within the traditional data center. So if you think about, putting those technologies together and what a hybrid enterprise solution architecture looks like, it's kind of valuable to kind of put this reservation scenario into maybe a concrete kind of example. And so what you might have in that example that we talked about is a number of different assets living on-premise as well as out in the field, maybe at the different restaurants, and then certainly in the cloud. And so you might look at the accept and confirm reservation as a workflow service that lives on-premise and consumes a workflow service that exists in the cloud. And so that workflow service, or excuse me, that WCF service might provide the process reservation task that then is consumed by this workflow service that's running on-premise on Windows Server AppFabric, and then the composite call that takes place from the process reservation service into the reservation of a table that might be provided by BizTalk server out in the field, maybe using Branch Edition, is really born of taking advantage of Windows Azure AppFabric and the AppFabric service bus, which really then bridges these boundaries that exist between your traditional data center and or the field, and investments that might make sense to move into Windows Azure. And if you think about this fictitious example, it makes a lot of sense because, again, I'm orchestrating and managing the overall workflow of the scenario that really is designed to be able to take in reservations, maybe from a call center, maybe from a web-enabled website property or a mobile device, and that process reservation service needs to be available across a variety of different devices, as well as on-premise within a back office. And then each of these different restaurants may be organized in a federated manner such that they receive reservations based on the governance that takes place in terms of that business process, and then finally reserves that reservation. So when you think about the capabilities around the tooling, it's interesting to see the fidelity that's really taking place within the Microsoft platform with regards to on-premise and cloud. So for each kind of layer in the stack, we have equivalents in terms of capabilities really taking shape, and you see that certainly in investments around the kind of middle tier space around application services with Windows Server AppFabric, which we'll talk more about today, on-premise, and Windows Azure AppFabric, and you'll see the evidence of continued investments on both fronts, specifically around AppFabric taking shape based on some of the updates that were provided at PDC 2010 and beyond. So when we think about the on-premise hosting experience that today is available to creating enterprise services, enterprise applications with Windows Communication Foundation and workflow services, we have a number of options that have been available to us since the release of .NET 3. One is self-hosting, which allows you to use any CLR process to actually create a service host, and in so doing, then you're able to expose your service logic across any number of endpoints. And this truly is one of the fantastic aspects of the WCF programming model, which is a write once, deploy once, expose across a number of different channels type models. Windows services are also an approach that have been available for quite some time, which actually takes the self-hosting model and kind of puts a little bit of more reliability in terms of the lifetime management, the ability of the host to actually auto-start with the operating system, et cetera, and continue to provide these capabilities across communication channels, including TCP, name pipes, MSMQ, in addition to HTTP, which again are going to give you the richest choice in terms of of communication protocols, encodings, et cetera, to really meet whatever the quality attributes you have for building your enterprise application services. And then IIS traditionally has provided message-based activation as well as process isolation, and really a great host for doing HTTP-only WCF and workflow services. But the biggest limitation historically with IIS has really been the fact that it as a web server, first and foremost, really only supported HTTP. So with Windows Process Activation Services, or WAS, we really start to see a rounding out of the capabilities, such as IIS becoming a first-class host for WCF and workflow services, continuing to support message-based activation, providing process isolation, giving IT pros as well as developers a familiar environment in which to work that they've been working with for several years, but then also bringing the completeness of the communication protocols to bear. So that's kind of a representative hosting experience that's been available up to this point. And in May of 2010, around the same time frame as TechEd 2010, Microsoft announced the general availability of Windows Server AppFabric, codenamed Dublin, which really builds on top of IIS and provides a robust hosting, monitoring, and caching infrastructure on top of the capabilities already available. So it's built around the .NET framework, such that you will leverage Server AppFabric to provide a first-class, very robust hosting environment for your workflow services, WCF services, as well as ASP.NET applications, providing persistence, hosting, monitoring, and caching. So all these attributes that deliver on these capabilities of long-running transactions, composable application services that are spanning multiple trust boundaries as well as application boundaries, a first-class hosting environment for actually providing features such as auto start and being able to manage persistence, et cetera, and then delivering on some of these elastic scalability capabilities that we'd otherwise look to cloud to provide. And we'll talk about how caching is a great on-premise capability that actually is also in the works for being made available in Azure AppFabric as well. To interact with these application runtime services and components, there's a number of management APIs that are provided via PowerShell commandlets, but for the most part, as a AppFabric developer, you'll work with Visual Studio using the tools and technologies that are already available, such as WCF and workflow. If you're an IT pro, you'll interact with Server AppFabric using the IIS Manager modules, which I'll be demoing here shortly. And then certainly from a cross-cutting concerns, there's management pack for System Center Operation Manager, as well as the ability to integrate more deeply with the management APIs from a server management perspective. So understanding that this is an eye chart, let's actually dive in a little bit and show some of this stuff in action. So the first pillar we talked about is delivery on scale, and some of the challenges inherent to that are things like database round tripping, right? Databases are an inherent part of enterprise applications today. We have a number of different capabilities available to us for using relational databases as backing stores, but one of the challenges with that is that there is a performance penalty to relying on the database for each and every transaction or service call. So you can start to kind of chip away at that problem by really investing in things like database partitioning or sharding, but that really is kind of an expert discipline that may not be available to everyone. And so one of the things that becomes quite common in enterprise applications is a caching strategy that is either going to be somewhat of a hand-rolled effort, or maybe using some third-party caching capabilities that are quite good. So let's actually take a look at the caching capabilities that are provided by Server AppFabric by just jumping into a demo and kind of showing this in action. So keeping with the theme of travel and hospitality, What I want to do now is actually just bring up this Blue Yonder website that's kind of a demo application that shows interaction with customers for maybe booking reservations, etc. And so what I want to do is click on About here, just kind of get a view here of all the different locations that Blue Yonder Airlines supports, and this should load here shortly, and making a call to the database, and then showing a list of all the different airports that serve Blue Yonder customers. So I'm going to refresh this a couple times just to be fair, just to kind of get an idea of what this round trip cost is. So we're seeing, on average around 100 milliseconds. Maybe 75 to 100 milliseconds in grabbing that list of airports. And so now what I want to do is actually jump into the code. This fictitious airline portal is actually built using ASP MVC. And so if you've done any MVC development, you're probably very intimately familiar with this idea of a controller. And so we'll actually go into the booking controller. And in the booking controller, there's a method that's responsible for returning that list of airports, and it's called get cached airports. And what you'll see here, hopefully everybody can see this, I'm at a very, very low resolution to make sure that the viewing experience is consistent for everybody that's attending. So I apologize if for some of you it's a little bit large. But what you'll see here is basically the method that returns a list of airports. And the implementation of that is a very simple link query that's actually going to the database and returning the list of airports. So what I want to do here is actually replace this implementation with one that prepared here, and save you the pain of actually watching me type here, and go ahead and insert an alternative to that. Which is really just a classic cache hit pattern. And all that's really going on here is the link query is almost identical, but this time what I'm doing is the first time that I grab a list of airports, if that list of airports does not exist in the cache, I'll go ahead and populate the cache, and then every subsequent time that I want to provide that list of airports, I don't have to hit the database, which should result in some improvements around performance and therefore scale. And so what I want to call your attention to here momentarily is that I've got this MVP application class with the get data cache method, and if I go to the implementation of that, what I'll actually see is that there's a data cache factory, and that data cache factory is actually leveraging the new Microsoft Application Server caching, which is a assembly that you reference, and then basically gives you pluggability into the caching infrastructure. So let me actually just go ahead and save this change, and I'll go ahead and compile here. Sorry, this resolution is throwing me off just a bit. There we go. Go ahead and just compile here momentarily, and while that's wrapping up here, I'm going to go ahead and shift back into the flight page, and I'll hit refresh here a couple times. The first time we'll kind of pay for the one-time hit of reloading the DLL, but after that, what you'll see is a pretty drastic reduction in time to actually load the list of airports. So we've gone from around 75 to 100 milliseconds down to 2 milliseconds in loading that list of airports. So that's pretty significant. And obviously this is an ASP.NET or ASP MVC example, which is kind of nice to kind of show a visual. Much of what we do from an enterprise kind of middleware perspective doesn't have a face. So I figured this would be a good way to kind of show that. But obviously this applies to any application services that you may be developing, WCF workflow, et cetera, can all take advantage of caching. So pop back into the deck here, and I think the summary here from a performance and scalability perspective is that by leveraging the server AppFabric cache, you're able to free up the DB from queries that are common for state that doesn't change much. You can also update the provider for session state in the config to use server AppFabric, which I'm not going to show in the interest of time. What that basically allows you to do is preserve your existing investments in your code base around session state to take advantage of this highly distributed cache service that's provided by server AppFabric that allows you to scale to as many nodes as you set up and provides an in-memory state. So it's very, very, very fast. So let's move on to some of the challenges and needs around hosting. So the shift that we saw from web to SOA and kind of that historical chart, really is kind of important, because if you think about how we manage services and workflow services from an IIS perspective, traditionally, they kind of look like any other web app, right? And the reality is that they're not just a web application; they're a service, and the domain in working with services and workflow services is very different from that of a web application. So we need to think about things like endpoints and services and the state of a workflow instance, whether it's idle, whether it's suspended, that it complete correctly, how many service calls have been successful, which have failed, why have they failed, and that's something that traditionally has been very challenging on the platform, because we haven't had a lot of great tooling there at the surface level to provide that level of visibility, which means that as developers, we've had to create enabling of logging infrastructures and maybe custom logging solutions. If I had $1 for every time I've rolled a new logging database service, I'd probably be a very wealthy man. So these are common things that really need to be commoditized, and I want to talk about how server AppFabric really helps in that regard in terms of the hosting experience, moving from the design and development time into runtime and the capabilities that are provided in terms of simplifying that configuration and management experience. So the first thing you'll notice when you install server AppFabric is the AppFabric dashboard, and there's 3 kind of modules that get added on top of the user experience there: the AppFabric dashboard, endpoints, and services, each of which I'll dive into here as part of the next demo. And really, when I think about the dashboard, I think of it as a single cockpit, right, that kind of gives me visibility into the state and health of my workflow services and WCF services. Capabilities around workflow persistence, such that you don't have to worry about wiring up your own workflow instance store. You can actually enable that via configuration, as I'll show here shortly. And for those of you that might be a little bit new to workflow services, workflow persistence is really the key to how you develop workflow services that are both scalable as well as provide the ability to actually manage long-running transactions. And so, the key idea here is that long-running and performance or scalability are somewhat at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? They kind of conflict with one another. So the solution to that is to do some work, persist to disk after being idle in memory for some time, and then wait for a subsequent stimulus to actually pick up where the work left off to continue the work, such that we're providing long-running services but not consuming resources in so doing. Capabilities like auto start, such that you actually don't require the arrival of a message to actually load configuration parameters or do some work as the service starts. So where you might otherwise look at like global ASIX to do some work, or NT hosted services are typically a reason that developers go that route. With Server AppFabric Auto Start, you basically get the capabilities to specify that when IIS starts, go ahead and start up that service, so it's ready to start processing messages, taking care of any pre-processing that might have been required. There's other capabilities such as instance restart that actually allows for orphaned instances to be consumed and complete through other host instances, which is something that you'll commonly encounter when running workflow services, as well as instance lock retries. So the idea that I might have a workflow instance that is being executed by a host instance, and there might be competing consumers there. So a strategy for how you want to approach that in terms of retry mechanisms. And deployment. So, one of the things that's been kind of a point of contention is how do I go quickly and easily from Visual Studio into IIS Manager and package these services and applications such that it doesn't always require a developer to perform the installation. So giving IT pros a package that they can use in a standardized manner, either automate the deployment in production through scripts, PowerShell, etc., or hand off a package such that an IT pro can import that package and really deploy that with a simplified experience that focuses on actually getting the application deployed, as opposed to all the steps that might otherwise be required to manually do that, taking an Xcopy approach. So let's actually take a look at that. I'm going to pop into Visual Studio here, into a different solution, and in the solution I have a number of WCF and workflow services that kind of make up this reservation scenario. So on-premise, which I want to focus on right now, I've got this workflow service called makeres.services. And if we look at the implementation of the service, it consists of a number of activities, and those activities basically are going to mimic the business processes that we talked about. So we want to be able to accept a reservation request, do some work there, process the reservation, and then based on some conditions, go ahead and confirm the reservation and send a notification. So in order to deploy this, I actually have a couple of options. I can always right-click here and select Publish, right? And I'll have a number of different options that I can use in order to do that. But the reality is that the developers aren't always going to have access to production environments, nor should they, for performing this deployment. And so we need a better way to be able to actually hand off these enterprise applications to the IT pro, who can then take them and deploy them into the production environment. So the solution for that is to actually build a deployment package. So if I go ahead and click on Build Deployment Package, you'll see that I get a message here saying that the publish succeeded. And now what I can do is go ahead and just browse to the location of the actual service implementation. If I go into this directory path here, I'll see that I now have a package called makeres.services. So what I can do now is actually hand this package off using whatever change control mechanisms I have to my IT pro, who's going to be most comfortable working within IIS, for example. And within IIS, as you can see here, now what I can do is actually import an application, passing it the path to the actual package, selecting the package, clicking Next, which provides a number of different options that the IT pro can choose along with advanced settings. But the scenario really is one in which it really requires minimal intervention and allows you to deploy that application quickly and easily into Server AppFabric. So I'm going to go ahead and start from scratch here and delete any existing applications, and click Next, and then click Finish. So at this point, what you'll see here is I have the workflow service that's been hosted. And if I go to Features View, you'll see here that I have my AppFabric dashboard along with endpoints and services. And so the first thing that I want to do is actually configure this application. So I'll go ahead and click configure here. And you'll see there's a number of different options available to me, including monitoring. So I'll go ahead and stick with the defaults. But you'll notice that out of the box, essentially for free, having deployed this workflow service to Server AppFabric, my monitoring is automatically set up to the monitoring store that was previously configured when I installed Server AppFabric. I can determine the level of monitoring that I'm interested in or turn it off if I so desire, and then I can wire up and configure lower level WCF service tracing as well without having to touch any XML. Workflow persistence, as we talked about, can simply be enabled with a couple of clicks. So I'll go ahead and do that now. I'll select the SQL server store, choosing the default here. Then if I go into advanced, there's a number of different options here, as we talked about, including host lock renewal, what to do when there's a lock exception. Do I want to retry, do nothing, or aggressively retry? Moving on into host management, I have a number of options in terms of how I want to manage that persistence. So, for example, do I want to go ahead and unload instances when idle after 60 seconds? Do I want to go ahead and persist instances to disk, get them out of memory after a certain period of time? So, for the purposes of the next demo, I'm just going to go ahead and put these at a very low number, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend in production, to 5, just so that we can actually see the interaction with Server AppFabric and kind of getting visibility into the state of the actual transaction. Auto start. I want to go ahead and enable auto start on the service such that it is absolutely ready to roll immediately following deployment, throttling, security, etc. So as you can see, a lot of these configuration that otherwise would require a lot of XML in the web.config really just kind of become part of that comprehensive hosting experience. So go ahead and click apply here and click OK. And now, again, looking at this virtual application on the surface, it looks no different than any other virtual application, right? But the reality is that if I go into endpoints, as you can see, there are artifacts that are in the context of what it is that we're dealing with, which is endpoints, right? So I have 2 endpoints that are enabled, one for basic HTTP, which is what I configured within the web.config, and then there's actually a net name pipe endpoint as well, which is kind of a control endpoint for interacting with the service from a programmatic or API level. My resolution is a little bit tricky here, but there's also a overview here that gives you some basic information about the service and the endpoints. In addition, if I go into services, you'll see that I have more information on the service, including an overview of the service and different characteristics that have been enabled, as well as monitoring statistics. So you can see that in kind of warming up for this demo, there's been seven calls received, 7 calls completed. Fortunately, no exceptions or faults, which is always a good thing. So from a hosting perspective, you can script the deployment of that package that I showed you, and as I demonstrated, all of this is integrated right within IIS, which means that IT pros will be very familiar with the user experience. You can get a health at a glance view at your application services and endpoints via the dashboard, and you get logging wired up for free. And really, what that means for developers and architects is less escalation, right? So you're giving the operational folks more capabilities that they can use without having to resort to XML, which very few folks that I talk to love working with an XML. So much better experience in terms of hosting your WCF and workflow services. So let's jump into the third pillar here, composing services. When we think about composition, it typically evokes kind of this image of a flowchart or a workflow, which is kind of the wheelhouse in which Windows workflow operates. And if you combine that idea of visually kind of modeling and describing the problem into units of reuse known as activities, and then adding the power of WCF, now you actually have the implementation of your services being delivered in a very visual way that actually also provides benefits beyond just the modeling aspects in terms of simplifying things like asynchronous invocation of activities or services, providing a very simple way to actually consume other interoperable services, etc. But again, traditionally, the idea with managing workflow services is that the management tools haven't been there, and deployment again has been somewhat difficult. So Server AppFabric aims to address a lot of those concerns with first-class support for workflow services, specifically around kind of understanding what's going on with services that the workflow is composing, as well as the state of a workflow in terms of its persisted or idle state. And so there's a number of capabilities, including workflow tracking, that gives you kind of lower level visibility and actually allows you to create your own tracking profiles to kind of control the verbosity of getting that real insight into what's happening within those workflow service activities. Event tracing for Windows support, which provides a very high-speed, optimized way to actually get visibility into the operational status and health of your services, which can be viewed through the event viewer or configured via tracking profiles. And then those pieces all kind of roll up into the AppFabric Monitoring capabilities, which again allows you to observe and manage the state of your workflows within IIS Manager using a very easy interface that is pretty easy to manage. So let's actually we're running a little bit behind, so let me actually just quickly jump into this next demo that will kind of show the workflow service that actually composes the reservation processing, makes a call to a WCF service that's hosted in Windows Azure, and then we'll actually use the service bus to make a call to a WCF service that is hosted on-premise that could also be a BizTalk orchestration exposed to the service. So I'll actually show this here quickly, and we'll kind of start wrapping things up. So within this workflow service, I quickly walked through kind of the activities, and hopefully what you noticed, and if you attended the workflow services talk, this is the same workflow service that we use there. So if you want to kind of dive deeper into the implementation, feel free to watch that talk, and if you have any questions, reach out. But in essence, the accept reservation request is an activity that is composed of a receive request, and that receive request allows for a call center, maybe a request over a website, mobile device, what have you, to actually make a reservation request for a restaurant. And there's a number of things that happen in terms of the implementation of that activity using other composite activities such as the logic to request a reservation, which is a custom activity, sending an email notification to the patron or the call center agent, and then actually providing a response back to the calling application, be it a mobile device, website, what have you. And then at that point, the workflow service is actually idle, right? So it's kind of fulfilled its initial purpose, and now it's basically waiting for the processing step. And so that processing step might be a reservations director, or maybe it's the maitre d' at a restaurant that actually makes sure that that request can be accommodated given somewhat of the dynamic nature that is within the services industry, and then basically either approves or declines that reservation. And now the key to this is that when that reservation is either approved or declined, we're going to make a call to that service in the cloud that is going to receive that request and then basically send a push notification, if you will, to the actual restaurant that's out, somewhere on the edge, exposed via the server AppFabric. The Windows AppFabric service bus. So let's actually just put this thing into action. I deployed it or redeployed it earlier. So first thing I want to do is just make sure that everything's up and running and that it's healthy. So I'll go ahead and just browse to it, bring it up here. And as you would expect, it's just the same service WCF service welcome page. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this to my clipboard. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use the WCF test client just to show the interaction with the service in a very quick and dirty manner. WCF test client is a tool that ships with Visual Studio that just provides a quick and dirty test harness, which if you've done any amount of enterprise service development, you know that this is a godsend, and chances are you've rolled your own. So what you can see here is a couple of endpoints and operations, right? So focusing on the basic HTTP endpoint that was exposed, we can go ahead and submit the reservation, calling the submit reservation operation, which is the operation that is exposed off of this initial activity. And so to do that, I'll go ahead and submit the reservation message here in this very primitive UI, but it gets the point across. So we'll say there's two guests potentially in the party. We'll provide a patron email address here. Turns out that Mr. Bob De Niro himself is interested in dining with us, which is a huge compliment. We'll change this to 6 o'clock p.m. sharp, and no smoking. So now when we invoke this service, we should get a confirmation number back of, in this case, 1175. And so that's really kind of the key to being able to correlate back on that instance of the workflow in the follow-up approval process that we'll take here. So let me actually show you what's happened, though, up to this point by showing you within a mail folder that we should have received a initial email message indicating that we've received the reservation, and this would kind of be key for a long-running business process, such that the end user knows that, hey, we're not done yet, but we received your message and we're kind of working on it, right? So I'll go ahead and open up this this email message here. And you'll see that it includes this confirmation number, which again is very important for the purposes of this demo. Nothing more going on than that for the moment. So now what I want to do is actually take the next step, which would happen maybe 5 minutes, 5 days, 5 hours later, and go ahead and process that reservation. And so to do that, I'll provide the reservation number, and I'll leave the comments alone. I'll go ahead and approve or confirm that reservation. Now, before I hit invoke, what I want to show you is that within Server AppFabric, we should be able to see some interesting statistics about this workflow service. And that is that this instance, or this workflow service, has one idle instance. And this is the instance that we're actually working with right now. Not quite sure what that error is about, but gives you some statistics around the instance. No errors have been encountered At this level, I think I had a binding issue show up earlier. And so this instance is idle. It's waiting for subsequent interaction. And so what I'm going to do now is invoke this approval step. And when I do that, it's a one-way message being sent to the service. And what's actually happening, once again, is that this workflow service is receiving the approval. It's making a call to the WCF service hosted in a web role in Windows Azure, which is then going to make a call to the on-premise orchestration service that then, actually reserves that reservation at the given restaurant. So if everything has completed accordingly, we should now see that there's another message, and if I open that, it should say that we look forward to serving you, which is great. And now what I want to show you is the actual service that was called. So if we go into the solution here, I'll go into my web.config, and in my web.config, you'll see this kind of gnarly address, which actually is an indication of the fact that this reservation service is currently in staging in the web role, so it hasn't gotten assigned a nice, clean, fancy URL, but that's okay. But let me go ahead and click on this and just show that was in fact up and running. So again, that's that service in the diagram that we initially talked about. That is going to provide that process reservation capability, then fire that request across the server AppFabric bus to the reserved table instance, which might be a BizTalk orchestration, might be a WCF service, or a BizTalk orchestration exposed as a service bus endpoint. And I'll wrap up here. I'm kind of merging a couple of demos in the interest of time. I'll wrap up here by basically showing you that orchestration service that actually is on-premise. In this case, it's a WCF service, but exposing a BizTalk orchestration using Azure AppFabric Connect would be an identical experience. And if we go into the endpoints view here of the service, we'll see here that we have a net TCP relay binding, which, if we configure that, is set up to the service bus endpoint address with a endpoint name of registration service, which the WCF service that's hosted in the web role is consuming from Azure. And so that's a very powerful capability, because it actually shows the ability to actually compose these business processes across deployment boundaries, not just from a cloud standpoint, but you could have a service that's listening on-premise being consumed by another branch or another trading partner or office, actually leveraging the internet. So pretty powerful stuff. When we think about AppFabric in terms of kind of what we have today and what's coming, I've focused a lot of our attention on this session around the Windows Server AppFabric capabilities and the composition that happens with Azure through the AppFabric Service Bus. But in the next release cadence for AppFabric, as announced at PDC, you're going to get increased fidelity on the Azure side through things like the cache service that I demonstrated, which will now be available to services running in Azure, a composition model that allows for first-class support, of workflow services, and the ability to actually compose different aspects of your application within Azure AppFabric. Investments around integration services and providing transformation, and then a lot of really key stuff coming out with the service buses announced in PDC 2010, including durable message buffers or durable queues, and then the potential for pub subtopics, eventing push notifications, discovery, etc. Again, as I mentioned, when you think about the on-premise capabilities, you have the ability to expose WCF services, workflow services, and BizTalk server orchestrations using Windows Azure AppFabric Service Bus, which really does create a very powerful capability for extending your investments on-premise into a hybrid enterprise application architecture. So with that, I want to just wrap up here with a couple of resources that are available to you as a follow-up. So there's really good content and information on MSDN around AppFabric, WCF, and workflow. So I encourage you to check out those landing pages. They include everything from the bits and SDKs that you can download today, completely free of charge, to white papers, videos, and pretty good documentation actually for starting to get your hands dirty with this stuff. If you're interested in going back and looking at the previous webcasts that actually focus a lot more deeply on WCF4, Workflow 4, Workflow Services, and Service Bus, those are available to you on the Neudesic website. And with that, I'll just leave you with some of the offerings that Neudesic is currently making available to customers. Include an enterprise solution architecture kind of assessment, where we're happy to come in, kind of take a look at your capabilities and what assets you have on-premise, talk about perhaps some candidates for moving some of those assets or workflows to the cloud, and actually providing a comprehensive solution architecture that allows you to take advantage of the best that on-premise has to offer today through BizTalk and Server AppFabric, and start chipping away at the right things that might make sense to push off into the cloud without losing that full circle, that full spectrum of connectivity. So with that, I want to thank you for your time. I realize we went about 5 minutes over, but if you have any questions or follow-ups, feel free to get in touch with me anytime. I'm happy to continue the conversation, and as well, the conversation continues on Twitter. You can reach me or Neudesic at Neudesic, who do know how to get in touch with me, and then use the Composite Enterprise hashtag. I'll be monitoring for that, as will Meredith, and we'll be sure to get to your questions and follow-ups even faster. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll hand it back over to Meredith.
Thanks, Rick, for this awesome presentation. We did have a question that came through, and just as a reminder to everybody to ask a question, click on the Q&A verbiage tool located in the toolbar on the left side of your screen, type your question, and then click the Ask button. One of the questions that came through was, how much does Server AppFabric cost, and how do I get it?
Okay, so the question was, how much does Server AppFabric cost, and how do I get it?
Correct.
The answer is it's absolutely free of charge. So obviously it requires Windows Server is kind of the foundation. But today you can go out to msdn.microsoft.com/appfabric, and there'll be a link to download the bits, or you can use the Microsoft Web Installer to download and install Server AppFabric. Absolutely free of charge, just part of the platform. Download it, use it, love it. It'll make your life and that of your ops folks a heck of a lot easier. So go out there and download it. There's no excuse not to. It's absolutely free.
Thanks, Rick. If anyone has any more questions, please feel free to type them in at this time. In the meantime, I'm going to click through a few polling questions, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. The first question: was this content helpful for your business? Yes or no? Great, thank you, everyone. Second question: please rate the presentation content, excellent, good, or poor. Thank you, everyone. Last question: would you like us to schedule a follow-up? Yes or no? Great, thanks, everyone. We will be throwing out a link to view a recording of this webcast once it becomes available. If you have any further questions about this presentation, please feel free to email Rick at rick.garibay@neudesic.com. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our next webcast. You are now free to disconnect. Thank you.